thank you for everyone getting onto the call today. We do appreciate you getting on in a timely fashion. Again, we're going to want to take a couple minutes so that everyone that's on the line right now can introduce themselves, so you kind of have an idea of who you're dealing with and who's going to be a part of this particular initiative in getting things kind of off the ground.
I'm Steve Avinger. I am the senior pastor of Greater St. Matthew Baptist Church. I am a bishop in the New Day Interfaith Ministries of Churches, general secretary. I've been pastoring for the past 33 years. I've served 4 administrations in Philadelphia, from Bill Green to Wilson Good, John Street, and geez, I forgot the brother's name, but that's okay.
We'll blame it on the weekend.
I have been involved in politics since college. I worked for Bill Gray on his first campaign, and have been going since then.
Good evening to everyone. My name is John Stanford. I'm an inspector with Philadelphia Police Department. I currently oversee a commander of the Internal Affairs Bureau, and my day-to-day operation is to investigate any type of complaints, as well as internal issues within the Philadelphia Police Department. I have a 20-year law enforcement experience with probation and parole, as well as the Philadelphia Police Department, and just happy to be here, part of the conversation.
A member of Mayor's Commission on African American Males. Part of the steering committee right now, working on different aspects to impact what's going on in terms of the infrastructure with the police and everything else that's happening in the city. Former president of the African American Chamber, and current founder of BBA, Black Business Accelerator.
So my name is Joel Wilson. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. So the main company that I own is JCW Computer Consulting. I currently serve as the president for 100 Black Men here in Philadelphia. I have also founded a STEM program called Tech Core 2 roughly about 6 years ago. And one of the more recent things that I'm very proud of is that I helped found an investment club here in the area called IBB Investment Group. And we currently have 24 partners of a combination of entrepreneurs and professionals and other folks in and around the city. So those areas that I do have some leadership are also areas I like to think I have a level of expertise, and I'm willing to share with the group. So thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Gentlemen, it's good to be here with you. My name is Eric Marsh. I too am a member of 100 Black Men in Philadelphia. I'm also a commissioner with the Mayor's Commission on African American Males, and I'm the co-founder of an organization called the Fathering Circle, which is a peer support group helping men examine male socialization and masculinity and its impact on women and children. So I'm glad to be here with you guys and look forward to support.
Again, welcome everyone. One of the things that I think is key, and it's really a positive affirmation, that from a mental perspective, in order to really start to move things forward, we have to truly understand who we are and what we do and how we affect other people. And what Made Man did was they came up with just a mission statement, if you will, that we would like for everyone to really kind of, one, say for themselves, and two, really take a hold of as we move down this path of and this initiative that we're doing. So I'm going to read it real quick, just so that you kind of know what the the statement is, and then I'd like to get everyone to say it as we go through the statement, phrase by phrase. And the statement is, each leader, in order to be a part of this event, again, has to understand it. So the statement is, I am a made man, involved in my community, Nothing changes if nothing changes. Again, we started this whole program off today with just that kind of understanding as far as what we want to do as an organization and what this particular segment is going to be around. So what I'd like to do is just kind of read this statement and then get everyone to kind of repeat it 1 or 2 times so we have an idea of where we are and what we're trying to do. So if everyone can kind of repeat this, and this will take us about 15 to 30 seconds. So if everybody can repeat all in unison right after I read this, again, just kind of bring us all onto the same page.
I am a made man.
Involved in my community.
Involved in my community.
Nothing changes if nothing changes.
Nothing changes. Nothing changes.
And I said this before everybody was on the line. I had seen this statement, nothing changes if nothing changes, until recently, not sure where I heard it for the first time, but to me, it really said a lot. Just those 5 words I think is very important for each one of us to really take a hold of, because we have to take ownership of what it is that we're trying to do. And it starts really with ourselves. Then we teach it to our families. And then after we teach it to our families, then we can ultimately go out and teach it to our communities and help our communities. Kind of have a discussion around, anyone that's a father on this line, have you had a discussion with your son relative to, and we can say daughter as well, but have you had a discussion with your children, and in this case, your son, when it comes to voter registration and what their responsibility is going forward as they go into that age of being able to vote at the age of 18. So I'll open it up for just a discussion around just that piece. Have we had those discussions?
Yeah, this is Eric. I just had a conversation. My oldest son is 25, and he and I just had this conversation just a few days ago. And it's interesting because I've kind of seeing his attitude towards voting changing over the years. My son served in the military. He was in the Air Force for a few years, served overseas, medical discharge, but really returned home not really understanding or seeing, how his vote really affected anything. And so we just recently had a whole conversation around, the presidential election and how, this general feeling of folks that, their vote doesn't count and things like that. So I said, well, do you realize that judges are also elected? I said, have you been following the press around the federal appointment of this nominee by the current president? And he hadn't really thought about it. I said, well, as a young Black man, who are you most likely to encounter in the course of, your daily life? You're going to run into the president, or you're going to stand in front of a judge? And when I put it to him like that, he thought about it a little bit differently. And I said, that's why the importance of local elections are so important, because judges are elected, depending on the seat that they serve. And so he had a little bit of an aha moment. We got a chance to talk about it a little bit more, and then, work our way up from local elections, council people, judges and whatnot like that, to how that then turns into something like this federal appointment. So yeah, we just had that conversation just a few days ago, and I'm glad to see that he's thinking a little bit differently about it.
Certainly, my son and daughter are very much engaged, at least in terms of voting and conversation and what have you, because they came up in a political house. That's all they've known me to be engaged in as a pastor and as a community leader. And so they are very conscientious of what's going on. And we engage in conversations every day, just about in terms of how we approach things and how things are, and the implications of where things are and where things are not. And so, and I have, I've been proud of them that they've been that conscientious, because some of their friends aren't, but they are very conscientious, and I'm happy about that.
My son is also a barber at my shop, and I can see how the other older customers and barbers influence him. But luckily, I'm more of an influence on him than over them. So it's almost, I have the last say so, and he follows what I say, because in voting, he said, because of you, Dad, I'm going to vote. Because at first he wasn't even going to vote.
Can I say something? How you doing? This is Jack, and I just wanted to excuse my tardiness. I know you put that question out for fathers. I am not a father, as far as I know. However, I have been fatherly to many youth, and a lot of the college youth that I work with, especially at LaSalle University, are all Black and brown. Anyway, to make a long story bearable, I just kind of wanted to know if the Made Man is taking a bipartisan sort of stance on this voting piece, or are they going in the direction towards Biden, Kamala, sort of, or, you know?
We have not spoken relative to, okay, is a Democrat or Republican independent, but I would say for the purpose of our conversation, we should probably stay apolitical when it comes to our discussion. And here's the reason why. One of our members, and he's probably the oldest member of 100 Black Men, and he has this statement. I don't know if he came up with it or if he heard it from someone else. His name is Reverend Pemberton. But one of the things that he has said so many, many times, and that is, we don't want to teach kids what to think, we want to teach them how to think. So we can't necessarily say, hey, we want to go for Biden and Harris, because in 4 years or 8 years, there's going to be somebody new. So the foundation I would suggest us to look to lay a foundation from teaching them how to go about being engaged, and not what to be engaged in, whether it's Democrat or Republican or independent. So I would suggest that's the way we should go, because we want to make sure that anyone that we're teaching, we teach them how to be themselves and be themselves first, and not to follow after somebody else. So again, I don't know on the Made Man side, but I would say for our conversations, it would be best for us to stay apolitical, so that again, we stay focused on, hey, look at what the politicians are saying, because you have some bad Democrats, you have some bad Republicans, and you have some bad independents. So the young people need to know how to form those questions that are going to allow them to make an educated decision based off of real information and documentation, and not just what they see on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever they get their information. To our conversation and working with the Made Man organization. The first one is father and son communication around voter education and voting itself. The second thing is, how do we engage barbershops? And this is where the Philadelphia Hair Company comes into play. How do we engage barbershops, not just one or two, but as a collective group, and utilize them to get these younger men to really become more engaged? And again, Eric, I think your comments, just asking that question, who will you run into first? Are you going to run into the President of the United States, whether it's Biden or whether it's Trump? Or are you going to run into a judge first? So I think just that conversation with a barber in a barber's chair is going to make them start to think, because that's going to be a real conversation that some of them may have already engaged in. Then the third prong to this particular approach is youth. And how do we engage the youth? And I'm identifying the youth as being someone between 9th grade and 12th grade. Because 18-year-old, as far as the system is seeing, they're an adult already. So my thing is, how do we get the younger people to understand, I need to know how to think and not what to think. So when they become of age, they're known what questions they need to ask so that they're getting their clarification. So Jack, so that's where this particular call is coming from, so that we have an idea as a collective group of men how we want to handle it in the Philadelphia metropolitan area. Does that kind of answer your question?
Gentlemen, my name is Kevin Davis, one of the co-chairs. I got my son in the back seat here.
So we here.
It's one of my bosses. I'm gonna have to step outside. I'm sorry, son. Give me a moment. Come on, give daddy a moment.
And so, you know what? Hey, Kevin, you're doing your thing. I like that, man.
So the situation is that we need, just like Keith was alluding to just really focus on having our youth understand the importance of voting and having that discussion with them. So people are all, they're familiar with taking polls. They're familiar with giving their opinions. They're familiar with complaining, but now there's a way in which we can do something about it. So, that's a right, freedom of speech. So we have to be able to vote, which is a privilege. We have to be able to, to vote. We have to see that, that we have to engage our youth to see the importance of doing that. I started out as an independent when I was 18 and working very hard to get someone on the ballot. And I'm quite sure gentlemen on this line would know better than I the ebbs and flow of Black support, even in the city of Philadelphia, when you look generationally in the last century, that it has switched, several times, and when we were talking about the last 150 years. So I don't really, per se think that our message should be all about this particular candidacy. It should be about
Agenda.
the institution of voting, especially when you're talking to someone who's 10, 14, 15, whatever. We're on to something else, and we could totally have, a whole different flip on a scenario. So I think we need to drill down on what we're asking the gentleman to do is collectively come up with a strategy of engaging at least 10 men who are willing to have a discussion with a youth, whether it be a nephew or son or mentee, about recording a 1 minute, 2 minute discussion on the importance of voting and trying to instill that privilege or that duty, and maybe we need to start talking, strategizing on that. Keith, what do you say?
I agree, and that's exactly where I was going. And so just so that everyone on the call has an idea, this is one of multiple Zooms that are taking place in different cities. So this is not just, the Made Man is not just happening here in Philadelphia. This exact same event is happening in multiple cities, and the goal and the idea is to have it happen on a local level, but then be able to bring together the knowledge on a national level as well.